Right, this is part 3. Welcome back, grade 12. So I'm just going to go through how to sort of go about generating information for your report. Please note that there is something called Google Scholar. If you are looking for articles, don't just go into Google. Please use Google Scholar. It is more accepted here. When you use Google Scholar, they have peer-reviewed articles, right? And case law. So we'll have specific examples of cases that you'd need for certain things this year, right? And peer-reviewed articles means that other academics review the articles that are on here to ensure that it is of sound quality, and so on and so forth. So please use Google Scholar instead of Google. It is a way to generate better sources, right? So I just went through, I'm going to go through xenophobia in hopefully one part. If not in 2 parts, I'll go through xenophobia. And then I will go through human trafficking. So if you've chosen xenophobia, you'd have to start off with the definition. And basically, it says that xenophobia is the dislike or prejudice against people from other countries. Okay? So study sheds light on how South Africa can best tackle prejudice against migrants. And this was posted in November of last year. Right? I'll get to where the source is from. And this is a visual on a protest that stood for Stand United Against Xenophobia and Gender-Based Violence. Right, so xenophobia is a serious problem in South Africa. Cross-border migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers in the country face harassment and discrimination. Hundreds of incidents of anti-immigrant hate crime have been reported in the past decade alone. To address this, the government launched the National Action Plan to Combat Racism, Racial Discrimination, Xenophobia, and Related Intolerance in March 2019. The plan recognizes that without quality data, the government will struggle to design effective policies to change public attitudes toward foreigners. Targeted communication campaigns can be very effective in expanding tolerance. Now, you have covered this in your current chapters, where you sort of speak on campaigns and blogs and things like that on how to be an active citizen, right? So this is one of the campaigns that was used. Okay, right. Okay, as research and reconciliation in Central Africa has shown to organize effective targeted campaigns, policymakers and civil society need to identify and map how people in South Africa think about immigrants. To build an effective communication campaign, you need to know your audience, right? So when you are building campaigns, you need to know who your audience is and how to best get information to them. Let's say, for instance, my audience and the audience I'm trying to impact is, let's say, the baby boomer generation. For those that don't know the baby boomer generation, those are the people that are born before technology. And let's say I want to conduct a campaign, and you have to sign up for that campaign through an online site. And not everyone in the baby boomer generation would be able to access that site or even have any knowledge of how to go about completing the survey or whatever on that site. So you need to take that into consideration when you are planning campaigns. Who is your audience? How are you going to get your information to them in an easy fashion? Because you want the people that you are giving this to be as comfortable as possible, so they can give you the best information possible. You do not want to sort of frustrate your interviewee before they've had a chance to even go through your questions. They're going to go through it with a poisoned mindset because you're giving it to them in a difficult platform, right? And you also might not even get as much responses as you wanted to. Okay, right, so in a bid to close the gap, market research companies Ipsos, in collaboration with the Human Science Research Council, HSRC, conducted a survey on anti-immigrant sentiment in South Africa. The survey covered the 4 provinces where most refugees and cross-border migrants live: Limpopo, KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, and Gauteng. Negative stereotypes about cross-border migrants and refugees were found to be common in many towns and villages, with people describing these groups as violent and dishonest. The research also sought to establish how South Africans who hold up anti-migrant sentiments get most of the information about the foreigners. A population segmentation analysis method was employed to break down the population into distinct groups based on their views towards non-nationals. Other studies have explained the depth of anti-immigrant sentiment in the country, but this is the first study to effectively segment the population in this way. So they have given you a history of what has been done in regards to xenophobia, what different studies has been done, and how their study is different. You may use this approach to some extent in your essay. Remember, you do not have as much or much of a word count or a leeway as they do. So if you're writing 2 marks, you don't have to write a whole paragraph for 2 marks, for instance. So keep it concise as possible. You don't have to go about this long way approach. You can do this, but in a more summarized fashion. Okay? Right, so this is the survey. The researchers conducted face-to-face interviews with 2,004 people over the age of 18 between October and November 2019. Field workers visited a representative sample speaking to the old and young, the rich and poor. The data was then weighted to ensure respectivity at the provincial level. So here they're showing you how many people they met with, how they met with them, and how they accounted for diversity within their survey, right? Survey participants were asked where they got the information about the refugees and migrants. They were also asked to which people's views they trusted about these groups. And so here they're going through the questions that they've asked this community. Using public attitudes on a range of issues, researchers were able to segment the population into 4 distinct groups: liberal, careful, judgmental, and ambivalent. Ambivalent means neither here or there, so fence sitters. The segmentation provided a rich amalgamated picture of differences in opinion. So this imparted that they accounted for all the different opinions on this. So they were lucky enough to have a research group in which they could draw from all these diverse understandings of things. Right. So the liberal cluster is about 20%, comprises of people who are more likely to have open-minded views about the refugees and migrants and are more positive about their socio-economic impact. So that's the impact socially on the community. So how will they niche in the niche that they've been placed? So in their community, are they good people? Do they not do things like noise pollution, for instance? So they are good neighbors, okay? And then economically, do they contribute to the economy of the country? So they have good views on them. The careful cluster is 23%, is composed of those who accept the rights of refugees to seek sanctuary, but are concerned about the impact of immigration, right? So they are concerned about all of these people coming in. They understand they have no other choice, but they want to make sure that it is managed effectively, right? And then we have the ambivalent cluster. This takes about 31%, is largely disengaged and does not have strong views about migrants or refugees. So they are neither here nor there about them. They just don't have any view. The judgmental segment is about 26% and has the most negative views and tends to view migrants and refugees as a danger. There is a substantial demographic differences in the composition of the different clusters. These could be useful when designing communication campaigns, right? So because there is differences between them, when you do your communication campaign, you will know how to deal with each one. So those that are more positive and seek that these immigrants are sort of doing well, generally your questions will be differently suited for them. In what ways do you feel like immigrant does so and so correctly? And then it would be different if for those that are judgmental, you would want to find out why they're judgmental, what is driving their judgmental force. So once you've gotten the diverse group of people you're working with, you know how to answer questions on that. So this is generally how research is done. Findings. One of the most important factors driving the formation of attitudes and hence behavior is for information. The kind and quality of information as in an individual can access influences the person's attitudes. Right, so the more information that you can gain from someone will sort of determine their attitude towards it. So if they feel like their opinions are heard, their opinions matter, and they're in a judgment-free space, it will sort of determine how they act toward that interview. So their attitude is how important, because you want them to give you proper information. And how to get them to have a good attitude is for you yourself to come with a good attitude in turn, that how you behave when conducting the information, right? So when your interviewer is giving you answers, you do not sort of make any facial any facial recognition whether you disagree or agree with him. You should be a neutral party and just listen and observe. You shouldn't sort of raise your eyebrows when they say something shocking or make a comment, because it will affect their attitude. Okay, so the media was found to be potentially highly influential in changing public's opinion on immigration. So yeah, there's another factor. When information is given from different resources, it influences how people think. So you're looking at that as well, that the information that they've been given, so not just the interview, but the information that people are exposed to outside of the interview, has an impact on how they see things. In addition, the data suggests that immigrant integration programs can assist in the fight against xenophobia. Trust in the media. Respondents were asked to indicate which sources provide the best and most honest information on refugees and cross-border migrants. More traditional media platforms, radio, television, newspaper, were found to be more trusted than other sources such as social media and community leaders. And I mean, given that you would trust the radio over someone's social media post, I understand that the radio is governed by certain conventions and laws, that they have to give accurate, so they are part of the broadcasting community, they have to give accurate information. So they would be held liable or accountable should that information not be accurate. Whereas, let's say, Tani Betsy on Facebook read something somewhere, and her account for that is not really substantial, hasn't been peer reviewed. So obviously I agree why they would trust the radio more than their community leaders. Right. So in the next part I'll go through their sort of findings that has been put into a graph.